This is Paul Schneiderman today on the 155th edition of the Sports Untold Podcast, also on the Seattle-based Rainier Avenue Radio.world. My special guest today is former NBA player and current business owner Steve Scheffler. Steve had a pro basketball career throughout the 1990s. He was a very Seattle Supersonics player. I think he played for the Sonics from about 1992 through 1997. We're going to have a great chat today. Got a lot of enthusiasm from my social media community and from other friends and family that Steve is coming on today. Steve was a very popular member of the Seattle Supersonics during that prolific Sonics decade of the 1990s. I try to make my podcast participatory in nature, so I got some really good questions for Steve from a whole bunch of listeners. Great questions. My assistant and producer and sidekick, Olivia Coyne. Olivia's been helping me with my podcast now for a couple of years, and her family, we're family friends. And Olivia's going to be starting Seattle University Law School in a few weeks. So she graduated University of Washington. So she's going to be starting a whole new journey pretty soon. My podcast is also on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, Google, iTunes, Podbean. You go to sportsuntoldpodcast.net. You can also go to my law office website, plslawoffices.com. And a good way to find me on or find my show on the internet is just Google Sports Untold YouTube. All right, Steve. Well, back to you. Steve Scheffler, as I mentioned, played in the NBA in the 1990s. He was a
Now
star.
hold on, Paul.
Yeah.
I got to interrupt you.
Okay.
If you're a lawyer, you stick to the facts.
Okay.
Here's the facts. I was a caboose on a Japanese bullet train, just getting pulled along, right? I was an expensive mascot slash practice dummy. My job was to beat up Sean Kemp every day in practice. Just don't hurt him. Whatever you do, don't hurt him. Because, Steve, you're never getting in the game unless we're 30 points ahead, 30 points behind, or everybody, and I mean everybody, is hurt. That's the only way. There's one chance in Tacoma when we're down there as a starting season, and I-5 was backed up so bad that we weren't going to have five, and they're talking about delaying the game and things like that. And I was like, hey, could I come off IR and actually play in this game? And, there were some guys that had some experience. And like Gary, I think he even got a police escort to go down the median to get there in time. But realistic speaking, the internet doesn't lie. I wasn't much of a player. And I knew that kind of when teammates would come to me and say, Steve, you're stealing money, which I was like, yeah, I know, but it beats working. And two, the referees were making more than you were, going like, hey, that's not right. But go ahead. Sorry for the long
Steve, you come
interruption.
across like Bob Uecker a little bit. The baseball Bob Uecker always made fun of himself too. But you had very few people make the NBA. You had a good career. So I think you're selling yourself a little short. But I will inject with that. But you had a
Wait. I'm selling myself short. Remember this.
yeah.
This is the clue.
Okay.
If you're a freshman in college, I was told when I was a senior, I was the worst recruiting mistake in Purdue basketball history. And the coaches don't want to redshirt you. That's a little bit of a clue. But when it comes to spring and they say, Steve, you were recruited by the football team. If you want to do spring football, you can. We're not going to hold you back. That's a clue. Maybe they don't want you.
Well,
Maybe.
I'm gonna fight you back again as a fan.
Okay.
Man, you were the Big Ten Player of the Year at Purdue University. That you were a Conference Player of the Year.
That was
So
my senior year. And again, that's because we had Coach Keady, who liked to throw the ball into the bigs. I could wrestle people, which were smaller than me, and they'd give me 2 foot layups, which makes it a little bit easier.
okay, I can't argue with you, but
But I've been going through all kind of old boxes or whatever and trying to clean stuff out. And I said to my nephew, "What's consistent with all these basketball pictures, like me of doing things with a basketball?" And he couldn't figure out. I said, "Hey, have you ever seen a basketball player with any of these moves?" And he was like, "No." Because they all look so unathletic, like your hands on the side of the ball, kind of behind the basket, trying to shoot a jump shot. Your knees are back behind. It's like, you look like the biggest retard. And you're like, yeah, kind of was, but was right
still
place,
Conference
right
Player of
time.
the Year, still Conference Player of the Year in a major conference, still member of
Yep.
a Western Conference Championship Team '96. But anyhow, you Steve, we're going to talk a little about your career, and I want to read you what a Facebook friend wrote. big Sonics fan, a guy named Jason Billingsley, when I announced your interview. Let me read you what he wrote. Bro, you are so lucky, referring to me. I've only met him once, referring to you, at the 1996 finals at Boeing Field, but it was one of the highlights of my life, especially as a Sonics fan. That dude's the nicest ever. He's even nicer than me. That's what one of your fans, Jason Billingsley, wrote on my Facebook wall when he learned I was interviewing you. So that's quite a compliment.
Well, let me compliment him also because when we went to the finals, right? And guys would try to be cool and play this off. This was the nice thing, knowing you're at the end of the bench and you don't really deserve to be there, right? So you kind of keep your head a little bit more level. But going to the airport and having the energy of Seattle and having the whole parking lot around Boeing Field from the street to the door and all in the concourse filled with people cheering, that's something special and that's something hard to forget. And those are one of those special memories where you go, hey, um, people say, oh yeah, if you're in the NBA and stuff like that. Hey, I played in New Jersey when there were sections in the upper row that were empty. Maybe they had 6,000 people in there. It's the fans and the energy that make it fun. The money's nice, right? That pays the bills and things like that, but that's not the fun. That's not the excitement.
Well, anyhow, you may have heard that term for a very nice person, the Yiddish language is a mensch. So Jason said you're a real mensch in how you treat him. So that's very nice, very nice. Well, yeah, one thing I think is relatable about you, Steve, is that, a guy like me, I'm a big sports fan, but I didn't make every team growing up. And when I made a team, I was oftentimes about the last guy on the bench. So I think people find your story relatable in many, many ways. Well, Steve, thanks for coming on the 155th edition of the Sports Untold podcast.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Absolutely. So, Steve, I have a friend of mine who's a retired surgeon. John's in his 80s now, and he grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I believe you live near Grand Rapids, I believe, but is that
I
correct?
lived in Ada, which is a suburb of Grand Rapids, home of Amway.
Yeah, yeah. And also the Present Ford Museum is there too.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me a little about Grand Rapids, Michigan, the area. Just I hear it's a pleasant part of the country.
Yeah, it's salt of the earth. You have it's boring compared to Seattle. It's but it's solid. It's a great place to raise kids and a family. It's oh, it's a lot of Dutch influence there, and they tend to be just very square. Like going out to Seattle tended to be this hippieville. We used to play slug bugs because there are so many old Volkswagens there, that still survived. So this was this new creative artsy place. And Grand Rapids was more of the square blockheads. Okay, we're going to march in place and keep going like that. So they each have their value, but there's a bit of a contrast. But it's a very friendly place also.
I hear there are some good breweries in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Yeah, strangely enough, Grand Rapids was the brewery capital of the America or the world or something like that by something like that. But I'm not sure how those results get measured.
Well, I've been to Michigan, never been to Grand Rapids. I'll have to check it out one day. Well, Steve, I know you had a brother who was a former NBA player. And why don't you just tell us about how you got the basketball bug growing up?
Um, I don't know how I got the basketball bug, but I know that I would go to his games when I was a little kid, and I'd come back and I'd be in my underwear and t-shirt and be right above his bedroom and dribble. The couch was one basket and the wall was another basket, and I'd just dribble the ball back and forth like a little rubber ball. And this is when I was a toddler, 2 or 3. I remember going to basketball camp. I think they let me in early at kindergarten or before kindergarten. And I remember being at a friend's house, Mike Bond. And I asked him what he wanted to do when he grew up. And the only answer you could answer, if you're a weirdo, you wanted to be soccer, but it was basketball, football, or baseball. It's like, which one of the three? And he wanted to be like a orthodontist or something. And I was like, no, Mike, what do you really want? I could not get my head around like you could want to be something besides a professional athlete. So that was my mentality.
Love it, love it. And I think you mentioned this before the interview started that you enjoyed football and baseball as a kid too, right?
I did. In a lot of ways, football probably would have been a better sport. My body was more tuned to playing football. I remember some football coaches told me when I was a senior, Steve, look we got this Matt Stegen guy. He's in the conference. He ended up playing at Michigan State, and he's better than you, and he's a sophomore, right? It's like you should really look at football. I was recruited by like University of Michigan and stuff. They wanted to make me a lineman, and I like being bigger than people. It kind of scared me going against people like, oh, you're not going to be the big guy anymore. But secondly, is I am retarded. I can say that because I grew up in special ed and they're like, no, you're not stupid. You're special, right? So, hey, if you get called retarded your whole life, you get to own that word. And college was very intimidating to me. And it was one of those situations where, hey, in football, you're just like one of these herd animals. You got your position coach, but there's 100 players compared to the head coach. In basketball, there are 15 players, 5 coaches, and then your head coach is like, yeah, you're not going to get lost in the weeds so much. So that was something that college terrified me, not being there. And that's one of the things where it's like, I think I got a better chance of getting a degree if I go basketball than football.
Did I read years ago, Steve, you have a dyslexia diagnosis?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
I can relate to that. I have some of those challenges myself. So,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And how did you decide to attend Purdue?
Oh. Looking back, it was pretty dumb to go to Purdue because Melvin McCants was a freshman and he was a starting center that was doing really well. But I knew Coach Keady took big guys. I was naive again. And my dad always really would drill into my head, don't worry about where you are today. You're going to pass this guy up, right? Just keep marching ahead and stuff like that. And I believed it. So Coach Keady took a guy, Jim Rowinski, and he was a walk-on, and he left All Big Ten Player of the Year. And I was like, well, if he can do that with a walk-on and he likes big guys, why don't I go there? It's a major program because the other schools I was considering was Central Michigan and Duke. But I was like, okay, Purdue, my brother went there. I know it. He likes big guys and he can develop big guys and you can fit right in that system. So it was Coach Keady and their stress on academics. And I
So
thought,
real
okay.
quickly, have you always been a pretty self-deprecating guy? Has always been part of your personality? You don't strike me as like the cocky former athlete at all,
I
so
can be cocky at times. It's just
okay.
life has humbled me quite a bit, so
Yeah.
it's easy.
Okay, okay, okay. Because when I started the podcast, I haven't had a guest just like put himself or herself down the way you did. It was almost like a Bob Euchre skit. It
It,
was
it, it's
so
it's better
so.
to sit yourself at the last seat at the table and get moved up than sit at the first seat and get moved down.
And also, people have trouble laughing at themselves. A lot of people do. You don't have that problem, I can tell. So,
No.
uh, um, Steve, I actually my best friend's Will had a question for you, and Will's a big college basketball fan. He wants to know: is Gene Keady, the coach that you mentioned, is he as much of a hard ass as a coach as he appeared on TV?
Yes and no. Um, I got introduced to Purdue basketball. The nice thing is they take you to a real practice, and let you watch it when you're getting recruited. And I saw the Saturday afternoon practice and went, oh boy, you better have your boots laced here. If anyone's curious to get the intensity, you can listen on YouTube. There is vulgarity involved. A Bob Knight halftime speech. Coach Keady wouldn't use that vulgarity, but he would have that intensity. We would sit there and we were under talented compared to the rest of Big Ten, but yet he won the championships. And it was because he would drive us. I remember my freshman year, we go and play Wichita State. And here's what they say when you go into overtime against Wichita State. Gentlemen, if we don't win this game, when we get home, tape practice. That means you land the plane, it's 3:30 in the morning, you can go and practice taped for 2 or 3 hours. Coaches will be there at your 7:30 classes to make sure you don't show up late. And then at 3:30, you're going to have another tape practice, and none of these are going to be pleasant. they're going to be so unpleasant that Coach Keady will say stuff like this: "Gentlemen, you're not boxing out, right? If the offensive team gets another rebound, everybody is running. And if the offensive team doesn't go for a rebound, everybody's running." And you look at your teammate and you go, "I think we're running, John." You know, so that was the intensity. And at the time, I remember going. This is going forward a little bit, but I got into my sophomore year. It was done. We had just won back-to-back Big Ten championships. I was tended to be the square that, hey, I'm just going to nose down and work and stuff like that. And coach was like, "Does anyone have an on, attitude problem on the team?" And I said, "Yeah, coach, I hate basketball." He's like, "Do you want to quit?" He's like, "No." And he didn't know what to do with me. He's like, "All right, Scheffler, just get out of here." Because that was one of those things where it was good. It was just very unpleasant going through it. But I'm happy I went through it, and I'm happy he was my coach. But then on the flip side is, here's this hard-nosed, uber competitive person. Then I talked to Gary when he's with the Toronto, and he plays with Coach Keady a little bit. I'm not sure how, maybe on one of the Olympic teams or something. And he's like, "Oh yeah, Coach Keady, he's real cool. He's real laid back and chilled." And you could see that side of Coach Keady. He had the soft heart. But coaches like Coach Carl, when he was in the CBA and went 50-6 or something, I talked to a teammate and he was like, "Yeah, he was real hard nosed. But then in the NBA with the Sonics, he was really Zen-like or whatever. He tried to get into that stuff." So I think great coaches adapt their offense and defense to their personnel, but then they also adapt their coaching styles to the situation that they're in. So when Coach Keady had low talent and he needed to shorten the game by holding the ball as much as possible, he had to win on competitiveness and toughness. And that's what he tried to drive into us. And it worked.
But how about that sleep deprivation? It didn't seem like you guys were always getting enough sleep.
Sleep when you're old. Sleep when you're old. And here's another thing. You think all these girls are going out with you because you're good looking? Look in the mirror, guys. It's this basketball that's getting you. You better pay attention to this. You can chase women when you're old. You focus on basketball now. Let the rest take it. You sleep when you're old. That was a quote from Coach Keady. So
it's funny. That's
yeah.
Funny. Was he a tougher coach than Coach Carl in a lot of ways, Keady?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we would sit there and run. I mean, you would have double blood blisters. So you have a blister. Then if you cut it open and it bleeds, that's a blood blister. Then if you cut it open, the first blister, and it bleeds and you step on it and it's still real sore, you cut underneath where that blister was and you get a second one that bleeds, and you're too afraid to cut much under that because you're figuring there's got to be bone or tendon there because I don't see what's left. And you're still practicing. Chucky White goes and pukes on the floor when we're running sprints. Chucky gets yelled at. "Chucky, go to the sideline and puke. Don't ruin the whole practice." You know what I mean? Now we got to run around this. Now we got to take a pause. You guys get to breathe. So yeah, coach, I remember coach would be like, "Hey, if anyone misses a line, Coach Keady would be this way. The whole team can run again, right? And these are brutal running drills." So I was always taught hit these lines. So I would be running with the Sonics for conditioning, and let's say you have three down and backs, right? Not so bad, but you're kind of a big, right? Roly-poly, stomping the ground, and you're going against greyhounds. So these guys are getting to the free throw line and turning around and coming back, and you're running all the way to the end and touching the line. And they're starting before the whistle goes. And then, you cut off 15 feet on each side of it. Next thing you know, even if I'm keeping up with them, I'm a full court length behind them. And this is just blowing my mind going, Coach told us always to cut the line. So I started cheating also because I was a coward and I wasn't very, like, hey, I'm just going to do this anyway because I didn't want to look like the slow person and get cut. Detlef, however, he went the full lines and kept up with the team. And I was like, good for him.
Steve, you kind of already kind of answered this question, but I'm still going to ask it. And here you were, a Big Ten Conference Player of the Year, and did it ever? I mean, you were one of the top college players of your conference, obviously, and a top Division I college player. Did it ever affect your self-esteem that you were not a star in the NBA? Did it ever bug you? Were there ever moments like, gosh, I got to get in there and play more? I know I can do a heck of a job. Did it ever affect your self-esteem that you were a bench guy?
Probably in a good way. But no, my expectations were I was very fortunate to be in the place that I was, just because college and pros are different games, right? And there's a lot of guys that have very good college skills that don't have NBA skills. So in that way, no, that didn't bother me a bit. I remember when I was with Charlotte and they had made the final cuts, and I was wearing the form, going through layups and going, wow, you're going to be an NBA player. And you felt really fortunate with that. That's the lifetime dream. And it's like, hey, wow, you actually made it. That's crazy. But then everybody says, oh, I'd be so happy if I was just on the NBA team, right? Liar, liar, liar. Because I would sit next to guys year after year that had more talent than me, and they would start complaining. And I'd be like, you're a knucklehead. What are you doing? Right? Because it's like coach has to deal with 7 egos, right? Which are going to be problematic. He doesn't have to deal with 9, 10, 11, and 12. Shut up and just do your job. But they wouldn't. They'd put their head in the noose. I mean, we had guys in the NBA finals. At the finals, coach told them to get in the game. They refused. I won't
Really?
mention. Really? Hey,
Oh
there's
my
2
goodness.
rules that I learned. This was very fortunate. My agent, Ron Grinker, who has passed away, but he was a good blue collar agent. He said, these are the 2 rules that don't get violated, and always keep these in mind. There's nothing professional about professional athletics, and it's the entertainment business. If you keep those in mind, everything makes sense. If you break those, then it gets chaotic. So yeah, I'm like, dude, if you get in the game, I know you have a beef with coach right now, right? If we win, it's going to help you. It'll help you get traded or get you on another team. It
Right.
opens up doors. You're hurting yourself, and yeah, you're hurting him, but you're you know cutting off your nose to spite your face, or however that saying goes. Like this is, and you couldn't really convince them to do otherwise. I mean,
Wow.
no. Here's how crazy it is. We're in the Western Conference Finals against Utah, right? And Detlef is killing them. And since being deep in the bench, if I go and question the coaches and stuff like that, nobody's thinking I'm going in there to get playing time or something like that. So I've got free reign. And I go, Coach Stotts, Terry Stotts, why are we going away from Detlef? And he says to me during the timeout, oh, because we need to we don't want Utah to figure out how to guard him. You know what I mean? Because we're going to save that for the fourth quarter. Sat there on the bench and thought about that a while, and I came back and said, Coach, they're going to come up with a scheme at halftime anyway. Why aren't we milking this? Now remember, this is Western Conference Finals, Game 7. Winner goes to the finals. And he's like, hey, you know this, Steve. If certain people don't get the ball and don't get their numbers, they will get their numbers. You want them to get their numbers in the first half, or do you want them to get their numbers in the fourth quarter when they could really screw up the game? And I went, wow, that is a crazy business we're in. It's like I thought it was all about winning and stuff like that. And it is. But yet there's different motivations. I remember Sam Perkins talked about, hey, yeah, when this guy throws me the ball out of a double team, He's good enough to throw it down at my knees. So he knows I'll catch it, but I can't get my shot off because the double team will come out and react to me. So he'll know my other only option is to give him back the ball. And I was like, really, Sam? That is crazy. That's disheartening. That's why some of the teams that were the best, let me give you an example at Boston. I was preseason there. The coaches were late for practice. Larry Bird and everybody, we're starting practice without him, right? And you do your karaoke steps and your back pedals, kind of warm up and stuff like that. Ed Pickney, his shoelace breaks. He goes and goes to the equipment manager, gets a new shoelace, relaces it up. Coaches still aren't there, and he makes up all the things that he missed to catch up with a team. And then Larry gives the coaches a hard time when they finally show up to practice because they knew they didn't have to be on time because he was going to run practice without them. And there it was all about winning. In a lot of other teams, it was mixed motivations at times, which was very frustrating.
Steve, that's really something. I mean, you shared, and I know you're not going to get all the details, but wow, that during the 96 playoffs, there was a player or two that did not want to play when
In the
asked to play.
finals,
In the
yes.
finals. Incredible, incredible. And I was at game 7 of that famous 96 Utah versus
Yeah.
Seattle game. Yeah, that's incredible.
Now
That's
hold on. Wait. I am guilty. Rich King and I would sit there at the end of the bench, right? And we secretly rooted for the other team. And you're like, why would you ever do that, Steve? That's pretty brutal. Well, we didn't root for him to win because we had worked out 2.5 hours before practice, before the game, right? We got a really good workout in. My hip flexor is tight as anything by sitting on this bench. People have been watching Sean Kemp dunk on everybody. And if we keep that lead up, we're going to put in some serious minutes. Rich, do you really feel like getting loosened up again? Or would you rather just cruise into the locker room and take this victory? Yeah, I kind of would want to cruise in today. Sometimes you want to get in. Sometimes you're like, no, I'm feeling pretty stiff.
okay.
It'd be good
Yeah,
not to get in. So,
gotcha.
you wouldn't ever say anything, but you're just like, okay, good. They cut the lead down. So you still wanted the Sonics to win, but you didn't want to necessarily get in there and embarrass yourself. So,
Interesting. Interesting.
oh,
Interesting.
yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that happen at the end of the bench.
You mentioned your now deceased agent, Steve. To becoming a coach or agent, was that something that has ever interested you?
Yes, not an agent so much, but a coach that did interest me. Um, but the problem with being a coach is it's very difficult on families, and that's what I wanted to put first, right? Um, I remember Matt Painter, who's the Purdue head coach. He was a freshman when I was a senior, and he wanted to go into coaching then. And I thought, wow, that's very mature of you. And I remember Coach Carl talking to Nate McMillan, going, "You would make a good assistant coach, right?" Um, Strategy wise, I think there's some good things with coaching, but then being an oddball, there's some bad things with coaching. So I don't know where that mix would fit. Coach Gergerich, I had a lot of respect for with how he worked with guys and just working with guys and teaching them things. I thought that would be interesting, but having to recruit guys like in college, that did not seem very, interesting to me.
Gotcha, gotcha. And you've had a good run in the business world. Well, Steve, I've asked these 2 questions about every guest since around 2019, and I just love. We can call it the Sports Untold questions. I always get amazing answers. Who is a living sports figure? Somebody who's still with us, could be a coach, general manager, player, someone who's still with us. You would enjoy interviewing or spending time with, and who's a deceased sports figure in history you would have enjoyed interviewing or spending time with.
Well, I was very fortunate to get to spend some time just from circumstances with some interesting sports figures. Like I used to do Costco and Seafirst Bank used to put on Jam and Hoops camps, and I like the free money to work these. So I'd work like week after week after week, traveling around like a circus show. And Bill Walton came with us, and he
Mhm.
spent like a week there, and we'd just go from bank branch to bank branch, and was able to talk with him. And there was another circumstance where the Indiana wanted to give Coach Wooden an award, And Coach Wooden was older, and after you see his condominium, he has so many awards. He's like, no, I'm not traveling back to Indiana to receive this. So they called me up because I went to Purdue. He went to Purdue. I was on the West Coast, and they're like, could we pay you to fly down to give Coach Wooden this award and spend the afternoon with him? And I was like, absolutely. So I had opportunities like that, was
Wow.
very yeah, you're just like, wow, what's the probability of that? But then I would like to see talk with Tony Stewart because I was a NASCAR fan, especially back in the day, and that's such a different sport. And being able to appreciate that and how it went, that would be interesting. Um,
Boy,
that half,
Wooden and Walton are just amazing now to see sports figures. Those are two
yeah,
amazing. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but those were two that I was able to actually spend time with. You know, I thought about the dead sports figures, and there's a lot of guys like Mikan that you might want to look at and stuff like that. But the rivalry between Indiana and Purdue was so intense that I knew Coach Keady that it'd be interesting to talk to Coach Knight
Yeah,
and
yeah.
understand his perspective more.
Sure, sure,
And
sure.
because we talked, the players that went through both systems, we had trade war stories or whatever, but to be able to sit in that locker room and hear about, you
So
know,
Bob Knight would probably be the deceased sports figure. If you had to pick one, you'd want to spend time with. Who is a living sports figure? Someone still with us.
Tony Stewart. Tony
Oh, okay,
Stewart.
okay.
Yeah,
Stewart.
because
Yeah, okay.
NASCAR, my
Yeah,
cousin runs these enduro races, or
yeah.
used to, and we used to love to go watch those. And I thought, wow, NASCAR is a whole different world, right? And to learn about that world, and he tended to be pretty blunt and rooted for him. And I was like, okay, that would be a interesting learning experience.
Great names, Bobby Knight and the auto racer Stewart. No one had mentioned those two. I think George Mikan had come up, John Wooden, but it's always fun. You can see why I enjoy getting answers to those questions. So, okay,
Who would
Steve.
you like to talk to?
What's that?
The question back to you.
Oh yeah.
Living,
I think about that a lot. I think Satchel Paige would be really fascinating.
okay?
He was a Negro League baseball player. He also played in the major leagues. I think Satchel
Yes.
Paige's perspective would be really interesting. That's just one. I mean, Jackie Robinson, Hank Greenberg. I For a living sports figure, I think about this a lot. I think Charles Barkley would be pretty fascinating to spend time with. You probably know Charles a bit.
Yeah, we had a bit of a relationship, Charles and I. So
Did you?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. He's up there. He's up there. I find
yeah,
him very interesting and provocative. So those are just, yeah. No one had asked me my picks, and
yeah.
okay, all right. You work in the business world. I'm going to ask you a similar question. Who is a deceased person in the business world? I'll throw out some names: Carnegie, Mellon, Steve Jobs, Lee Iacocca, Jack Welch. Those just a couple you would enjoy spending time with. Doesn't be a famous person. And who's a living person in the business world you would enjoy spending time with. I'll just throw out some names: Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer, maybe a pro sports owner out there. So similar question, but for people in the business world, one living, one deceased.
Probably Carnegie, you know, deceased. I got a chance to meet Paul Allen. That's a funny story. Is sitting with the Sonics, they had two seats that were right next to the scorers table that I always wanted to sit next to. And we had friends, Pam and Jim Fattori. They were smart. They got tickets right behind the visitors' um, bench. So, and I always thought like, oh, sitting on the end of the scorers table, being able to look over into the visitors' huddle and stuff like that, that was a dream. So I was like, okay, let me go to this game. And the Sonics, under Howard Schultz, would pay players to go to the games and interact with the people and stuff like that. That was nice. And I had got tickets for one of our manufacturers to come. Actually, it was the Amazon buyer or whatever. They weren't able to make it, and those two seats got open second half. And I knew the people, the ushers or whatever, and they let me go and sit down there next to Pam and Jim and Vittori, and they happened to know Steve Ballmer. So had a little conversation there, and I thought, wow, this is something wild and crazy. But So let's say living business person. Oh, Donald Trump.
Trump.
He's like him or hate him. I know there's polarity, that. But if you just look at here's his public persona, here's his private persona, what makes him tick? What makes his family dynamics? What makes his, you know, ego? How does that interact? Because I think he has a bit of a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde with him. And I think that would just be that interesting person. I don't know if we would be best friends, but I don't think we'd be worst enemies. And talking to some people that are on the left that actually got to spend time with him, they said, yeah, he is a pretty interesting person.
So Carnegie would be your deceased person in the
Yes,
business world, and Trump would be your living one that you would find interesting to spend time with. Okay, awesome.
yes.
Hey, Olivia has a question or two for you, Steve. Olivia, jump in.
All right, so very different direction I'm going in. You got to travel a lot, obviously. What was your favorite city to visit when you were playing? And then what was your favorite arena to play in?
Um, the favorite city, does it have to be an NBA city?
Let's do NBA city and then non-NBA city.
Okay. Um, well, you could, that's a tough one. Um, the favorite NBA city, I'll say, even though I didn't like the arena and stuff like that, was Atlanta because they had this place called Friedman's and they would do custom shoes there, but then they'd also have economical dress shoes. And guys would go take cabs, and like 5 or 10 of them would all go to Friedman's in Atlanta. It was this hole in the wall shoe store, and you could get shoes there that you couldn't find anywhere else. And you're like, hey, wow, I can actually find a selection that fits. Bad reason for going to a particular arena. It's not because of the crowds or anything like that. Um, Least favorite place to go to, probably New Jersey.
Hmm.
And the reason being is New Jersey just had such a dead arena at the time. It was out in the middle of nowhere. Um, and you would go there and the guys would call out section 408, row 12, seat 8, come down and get your courtside tickets. And you'd look up there and there's no one in the total section. And it's much better to play in a high school gym where everyone's packed and rowdy than to play in an empty NBA arena because it's the energy of the fans, not the number of the fans, not the level of the basketball. It just has to have energy and it has to be competitive. That's what makes the game exciting. And there's a number of NBA arenas that don't have that, depends on their record at the time. And when you don't have that energy, it becomes much more like work to go out there. And then when you do have that energy, which I was very fortunate in Seattle, they had an abundance of energy, made it a lot of fun, brought the excitement up.
That's a good
Fascinating.
answer. Thank you.
Olivia, anything else for Steve?
Did you have like a best friend on the team? Or who was your best friend on the team? Actually, I'll rephrase it.
Yes. So had a lot of people that we're friends with, but being low on the totem pole when we got the chartered plane, I was in the front row because it didn't have quite as much leg room. And me and Eddie Johnson would argue and argue and argue about nothing all the time. And Ricky Pierce was sitting next to Eddie. And eventually he just said, Chef, take this seat. I can't take this anymore, right? So then he took a worse seat. I got a better seat. And Eddie and I, we would argue about nothing, everything from space aliens to like we were playing cards. And the one time I just dropped all my cards because I could go out in 500 rummy. And Eddie would be like, "Oh, that's cheating. You didn't really go out," and we'd just go on with an argument like that. So we had great conversations. Eddie was the only guy when we were on the bus in Japan that he and Gary got into an argument about nothing, just having fun because they're stuck in traffic. And I just remember Eddie turning around and looking, going, "Is that all? I don't hear anything back there. That it? Okay." I was like, wow, he won the argument with Gary. That is amazing. But then also Brakowski, he was down to earth and fun. I remember sitting on the bench with him in Utah, it was in Phoenix, and he was screaming, illegal defense, illegal defense. And I was like, Brick, we're on defense. He's like, oh yeah, flashback, flashback. We're just cracking up. So he was down to earth also. So those would be two of them that were my favorites.
That's
I think
great.
you had a nice tie to Sam Perkins too. Didn't you have a nice tie with Sam?
Yeah, Sam. All right. So here's what Sam does. I was known as not being very classy, with dress and with cars and things like that. So I was always like, hey, I am like Coach Carl would argue with me because I was always on the cut contract till the end of my career. And we'd argue politics while we're stretching. And he's like, Scheffler, I can fire you right now. It's like, yeah, coach, but you're still wrong. And he'd just laugh at that and walk away, right? Because he could. Until like in December, I could get fired, and that was it. So I was always like, if I've got to be on the end of the bench, I'm going to get a tire that I can use in the business world. And they're like, Scheffler, you look like a banker. Come on, why don't you get something? So then Sam finally had mercy on me. First we go to Houston, and Eric Snow takes me out, and we finally gets me like 2 pair of pants and 2 shirts. And this is one of the shirts that I got at that time. You can tell how I hoard things, right? And Rick goes, and we go out there and work out before the game. And I get into the locker room after the game. We won the game, fortunately. And I'm getting ready to walk out. And Brick says, oh, could you hand me a Gatorade? So I bend down to get a Gatorade, and the back of my pants ripped totally out. And I throw the thing, and I am steaming now. It's like, you guys, you told me to get all this clothing stuff. Look at all this stuff. I should have stayed with my old whatever khakis. I would have been fine. So I got a towel, walked out to the bus, and then Mark St. Ives said, oh, yeah, by the way, Steve, that wasn't an accident. Brakowski, he came, and he took a knife and cut all the thread in the seam. So it just left the seam together, but as soon as I bent over, it split out. Oh. So then, this gets back to Sam. It's a long story to get to Sam. So yes, I like Smooth a lot. So Sam felt bad for me. So he's like, here, Steve, here's some clothes that you can wear, because I'm getting rid of them. They're out of my style or whatever, and we're about the same size. You can wear these. So we're over at Detlef's Shrimp, right? And we're at a team function there or whatever, and I'm wearing a Carl Kanai shirt and they're like, yeah, chef, way to step up. You got some clothes. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, oh, yeah, Sam gave them to me. And I'm trying to praise Sam, right? Sam comes over to me, and he's like, chef, do not tell anybody you got them from me. This is not making me look good, really. So, yes, I got along with Sam, and Sam was very cool also.
Sam took care of you that time.
Yes, he did.
Great stories. I had on one of your NBA colleagues, Kenny Anderson, about 4 years ago. And I remember it was in January 21. And I asked Kenny, I go, I'm paraphrasing, but I said, Kenny, Gary Peyton's a fun guy, isn't he? Kenny said, he is, but you got to get to know him. Can he break down Gary pretty well?
Yeah, for me, Gary and I usually knocked heads together or whatever, right? So we were not bosom buddies by any means, right? But here's what I can say about Gary, because we had other teammates that I looked down on, because, the grandmas would come up to you and say, isn't he the greatest guy ever, right? And you'd go like, no, he's actually pretty much of a jerk. And you look at the plus minus numbers going like, the people are thinking he should go into the All-Star game, and plus minus is when you're in the game, does the score go in your favor or the opposing favor? Coach Carl was instrumental in starting that up. And this guy would, even though he is a starter, have negative numbers. And yet Nate McMillan had some of the most positive numbers on the whole team. And no one's talking to him about being an all-star. So getting back to Gary then, I can say this. Gary took care of the guys he grew up with. He put them through college. He looked after them. And Gary, I remember one time in Portland, he was like, I'm in so much pain, I could shoot my shoulder off. That's what I thought about, at night or whatever. And he didn't because he just played through it. Gary Peyton had the one of the longest streaks of consistently playing. He played with a broken foot and people didn't know. Broken bone in
Amazing.
his foot. Yeah, and with his agility and stuff and being, it's one thing to be a big and kind of limp along. He's got no room to hide, no room to limp, and you're playing with a broken foot. That takes some mental toughness. So, yeah.
You respect Gary a lot as a competitor. Something else about Gary that I've heard through the grapevine is he would never turn down a kid at Children's Hospital either. If a kid wanted to see
Yeah,
him, I hear Gary was very good with community stuff like that. So
I think he was. Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought what Kenny Anderson said always kind of made me laugh. Well, you got to get to know him though. So that was
Yeah, you
but
do.
yeah, yeah. Steve, you mentioned something about, how you and Carl, and I've met Coach Carl a couple times and argue about politics and stuff. And feel free to challenge the premise of my question if the premise is off base. But as a conservative leaning white guy in the NBA playing a predominantly African American league, you were pretty unique among the players and your perspectives and so forth, weren't you?
I was unique. Yes, but I was also unique because I, um, what is this? Why was I unique? Because I minored in philosophy and religious studies going into college,
Right,
and they did this personality test, and I just read it, and they're like, your personality for the Briggs Stratton is 1%. Now, 1% can be genius or retarded or a mix of both. It doesn't,
right.
it makes you an oddball. But I like to experience other players and learn their experiences and stuff like that. And one of the things that, I know you asked guests like, what's one of their favorite sports movies?
Yeah.
And mine was Hoop Streams because that followed two African American guys in Chicago and their trajectory through Division I, going out of high school and things like that. And it was a documentary. I mean, the power went out in their house,
By the
and
way, you
here it
just
is.
answered one of my questions. You probably
Well, I
listened to
did
this
some
one.
research. I was like, okay, yeah, who's the favorite dead and alive
Okay,
athlete? It's like, I better
okay,
think about this first, do
okay,
my
okay,
homework.
okay.
Um, so, but anyways, getting back to what was the question?
Oh, about being a
Oh,
conservative leaning
okay,
white guy in the
okay, yes.
NBA.
So here's some of the issues that are involved around that, right? A, remember, basketball is an entertainment business. This was before you had a big influence of Europeans. You don't want an all black team because 95% of your audience is white. So you're going to want that token white guy on the end of the bench if at all possible. So that's going to give you an advantage being white in the NBA. It's not right, it's not fair, but that's the business, right? On the other side, if you go to Europe, they don't want a white guy. They want something. We got plenty of white stiffs here. We don't care how he plays basketball. We need somebody different, exciting, exotic. Da 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 da. Again, entertainment business doesn't make either side of that equation right, but that's just part of it. But I like to interview people and learn about different environments. And here's the thing that I learned, that most of my teammates had a knife drawn on them or in close proximity, had a gun close to them pointed or shots fired, not like in a big area, but like we're in a party in a house and the guns. I remember the one guy got shot in the back of the head with a pillow over him. They were trying to kill him and he survived. Gerald Patio was like, no, I'm not going back to Mississippi to live or wherever he was from. It's like, I go and visit my mom because, hey, my principal I knew was the head of the KKK. And I'm like, wow,
Wow.
this is a different environment. Eddie Johnson told me, hey, when you walk by an alley in South Chicago, you pause and you take two steps, you walk by that alley, you pause and take two steps back and look back down that alley. Because if the guy's running out to mug you, if you keep walking, he's going to have momentum and take that corner because he's hiding in there and jump you.
Wow.
If you go past, he'll start running. You take your 2 steps back, look, and you'll see him and have time to take off and run. Eddie grew up when, these guys roughed him up a bit in Southside Chicago, and his brother had some affiliations with some rough people. So they got these guys together with guns on them in the back area, and they gave Eddie, the 11-year-old, the bat. He said, "Go at him." And these 18, 20-year-olds had to stand there and let Eddie just wallop on them
Wow.
at gunpoint, and you're like, wow, this is a different world. This is a different environment. The one thing people can take away from it is most everybody had an auntie, a mother, a father, somebody in their life that really believed in them and pushed. I mean, Nate McMillan talked about his mom having 2 or 3 jobs and working to the bone to keep, food on the table, but giving their kids that opportunity and going through that struggle was like, wow, that's something you should really appreciate and just recognize that, hey, there's some differences here. And when we're evaluating people, look at it as much as you can through their perspective.
Love it. I love it. That's part of my philosophy in the work I do as well. Love it. Um, Mike Heavey, one of my Facebook friends, has 3 great questions for you. How'd you pick number 55? What is one of your favorite spots in Seattle? Any perspectives on bringing the NBA back to Seattle? 3 really good questions there.
Okay, I'd love to bring, basketball back to Seattle. I think we all know it's kind of jerry-rigged how it left Seattle. Unfortunately, things didn't line up there. I thought Seattle was a very supportive town. The crazy thing is, I remember when we were with what was it, with the Hornets, and we came out to Seattle and we got lost going to Bellevue to the pro club to practice. I was like, the one place in the NBA I don't want to play is Seattle. This is way too far. I wanted something like Indiana or Detroit so I could be close to the family and stuff like that. I'm really glad. Some things you wish for, you know, be careful what you wish for, because I got Seattle and I was so happy I was there. Um, but it took a while to adjust to. Um, what was the
Number
rest of
55. How'd you get number 55?
55?
Yeah.
Stupid answer there. Okay, 55. Well, that's the biggest number you could have, right? And it takes the official 2 hands to put up their hands, right? If they want to call a foul on you, it's easier to go 5 or 3, something like that. And Sammy Hagar had the song, "I Can't Drive 55." Yeah, I'm going to be the biggest and the fastest. Yeah, 55. Dyslexic, I can write it backwards. I don't have to worry about screwing that up. Bad choice there, but
Love it. Hey, what were some of your favorite spots in Seattle?
favorite spots in Seattle. Oh, okay. I lived in West Seattle, so I really enjoyed that experience there. You have the Elki Beach and things like that. Um, but one of the things I used to love to do was go out on the ferries and just ride them. And here will be the most adventurous ferry story that I ever had. My wife and I go, and this is when I was retired, but we went and we're like, hey, we're used to the winter, and you have that one horse sleigh, and stuff like that. Let's go sit out on the front of the ferry and we'll just bundle up during the winter kinda and just watch the sights and go across. So we go across to Bremerton, and I took no, it was Bainbridge Island. Took the ferry many a times just for the experience, and we're bundled up there. And pretty soon, people start gathering closer as we get into the harbor, and then it gets jam packed, and people are starting to talk. You can hear them. Are there people in there? Is that just a bar of trash? And there's like a dog looking in at us, kind of barking or whatever. And we're like, oh no, if I stand up right now and people are recognizing me, how am I going to explain this, right? We just hung low, let them get off, and we're like, okay, next time we do this, we got to get up before we get close to the harbor. So that was one. The second was Squamish Falls, because you got out to nature, and that's where I proposed to my wife.
Oh, good. Good.
Here's how stupid I am. I get a ring from a friend at Zales Lyndon Waller, and he gives me the ring, the diamond. Yeah, I buy it from him, and the magnifying glass. And I'm in this cheap apartment in West Seattle because I'm trying to save money. Um, so I just take the ring and throw it in the closet behind the water heater along with the magnifying glass. So if my fiance Kim comes from Michigan, she won't stumble across it and say, "What's this?" So it's late at night and I want to go propose to her. So I go reach behind there and I grab the ring. We go out to Suquamish. We walk all the way down the path. I get into this long speech about how she's like the waterfall and stuff like that. And she's wondering what's going on. I'm getting ready to propose and I can't get the stupid box open for the ring. I grabbed the magnifying glass that I forgot was back there on accident and ended up proposing to her with a magnifying glass, went back, got the ring and proposed to her a second time. She said yes both times, fortunately. So, but just the times out in the Suquamish, going out there and just having the 7-course breakfast, taking your
Yeah,
parents out there
yeah.
and experiencing nature, that was really neat too. But then
And
also, wait, there's a lot more places in Seattle. You'd go to the farmers market. Now, note, my wife was a very successful pharmaceutical rep. With AstraZeneca, she was number 1 or number 2 in the country at times,
oh,
right? So the president knew her name. She would negotiate at the end of the market with a flower person for the price of flowers, going $5, no, $3, right? And you'd just be kind of walking away going, I hope they don't recognize me. This is going to look really bad. But then on the other hand, that was just parts of her nature. She was in Boise, Idaho on a charity golf outing with Coach Carl, and she got a standby ticket. They were oversold. They took 2 people off the plane, had to compensate them, and she got on the plane with a standby ticket because she talked to the right gate agent. How you can do that is beyond me. So
good
going to the
sales
Pikes
lady
Place,
right there. Yeah.
good salesperson, but she was a hard negotiator and she just liked to do it for fun. But at garage sales or at the Pikes Place market, you just kind of walk away going, oh boy, this is not good.
Got to get a few more questions in, Steve.
Sure.
Was that your favorite part of being an NBA player, was participating in the 96 NBA championship series? Was that your highlight of your NBA career?
Maybe. I remember one play in particular that was very significant being in the NBA finals were against the Bulls. We had been down on the series. It was a very close game. And it was going into half, maybe 30 seconds left. And coach all of a sudden said, "Chef." And I was like, what? And he said, "Get in there, back shadow," and I was going to, they had like Bill Winnington and I was going to guard him or whatever and just take the ball out of the point guard's hands, disrupt, put a little bit of energy into it. But the main thing, it was like, hey, this is the pinnacle, the NBA finals, and this game counts and you're in there to do something good. So I rip off the sweats. I run in there. Unfortunately, they go and take the big stiff out and they put in Kukoc. Now I'm looking at the guys going like, okay, there's Jordan I can guard. Even though I've shut him down before, I've got 100%. That's a different story. There's a lot of caveats to it. I've shut Jordan down one-on-one 100% of the time.
Love it.
But I don't want to take a chance at that streak. Pippen, probably not a good matchup. Point guard, not a good matchup. Like, all right, finally, Kukoc, right? So I'm like, all right, I'll guard Kukoc. So they bring the ball down, and sure enough, they clear out everybody. Kukoc is on the top of the key, and it's an isolation. And Detlef's yelling at me, "Don't let him go left." I'm trying not to hyperventilate, and I'm dyslexic. I don't know where left is anymore. I don't know where left is. I'm just trying to stop him and not embarrassing myself on national television. So sure enough, he goes left. Detlef goes over to double team or whatever. They kick the ball out. So it's like, okay, at least he didn't dunk on me. And then he goes down to the block, and they throw the ball into him. And I was like, this is dumb. You just got into a pig pen with a pig. I go every day against Sean Kemp, and he's pretty bloody quick down here, right? This is the only place on the court I can guard anybody, and you just went there. And all of a sudden, the time's going and I hear a whistle. And I was like, doggone it, they called a foul on me. This is ridiculous. You know what I mean? It's like I was hand checking them, yeah, but there wasn't even a real move made. Traveling. Now you can look it up on YouTube, and watch the game. I think the referees were trying to sway the game a bit for the Sonics' advantage because they want to extend the series. I can tell you stories about that too. But I can say for one play at the highest stage, I did good when the game counted. And it's like, okay, that's hard to beat.
I
Now,
watched a video of you in the '96 championship, and you had to get a rebound or two. It was fun. It was fun. It was fun.
yeah.
My friend Blaine, a big basketball fan, he wants to know. This is a really fascinating question. He wants to know when you played against some of the toughest guys in the NBA, if you could pick one, which would you pick? Knee pads, elbow pads, or a mouth guard?
Okay, well, I'm going to roll back the story a little bit if it's going to be a long story. First, technically a mouth guard, but that's not the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say, is this. When I was in college, I couldn't get on the court, right? So all I do is set picks for a guy called Troy Lewis and get him open. This is in summer basketball because otherwise I wouldn't get on the team, right? And nobody's going to throw the ball to me. So I just set picks all the time. And he would get open, shoot some threes. My biggest play in college was taking a back pick when I was a sophomore and a guy from Michigan State. And Troy Lewis cut to the back and he got hit and just fell down and was on the court. They had to come and get him off or whatever. Nothing dirty about it. His guy just didn't call a pick and I was standing there. That was like, oh, that's like a football cockroach, right? And it's like, hey, you actually did something. So when I was in college, I would wear 2 thigh pads from football. I'd wear 2 hip pads from football, a tailbone pad from football, a knee thing, 2 thumb pads that had plaster in them that were taped up because my thumbs went bad, elbow pad, and a cup. So I'd go into practice, or you could really freak guys out because you would hit yourself in the groin really hard, like 2 times. And guys would be like, this guy's insane.
Yeah.
This is not right. You know what I mean? So you had an intimidation value there. And then the one time I broke my nose, and this is before they had the mask or whatever. So the trainer is like, you can go out there with a football helmet. So I went out and warm ups with a football helmet, and I had like Jeff Arnold and others were like, no, I don't care what coach does. I am not playing with that guy if you let him have a football helmet and stuff like that. So I would take a football helmet if I was going to wear anything, because then you could have a whole lot of fun in the NBA. But I think if anything, I would go with mouthpiece because, yeah, you are going to lose teeth too easily, but thigh
Yeah.
pads would be awful effective because you can use your thighs as good weapons to move people around and things.
I like that question Blaine has here. I think
Yeah.
it's good. Yeah, it's interesting. Interesting. Let me get a couple more and I'll let you go. I asked, I know you apparently listened to maybe one of my interviews, but you're the second person I've asked this question. I had Chuck Todd on, the Meet the Press, former Meet the Press guy on a couple
Mhm.
months ago, and I asked Chuck this question. I'm asking you this question. I'm curious. So you were born in 1967. Um, if you could spend an hour talking sports only with a president in your lifetime, doesn't necessarily have to be your favorite president, but if you could pick one president in your lifetime, who would it be? Would it be LBJ, Nixon, who was a big sports fan, Ford, fellow Michigander who played football, Carter, Reagan. Reagan was a former athlete and played the Gipper in the movies, or that one movie. Bush 41, Yale baseball player. Clinton, uh, Bush 43 was a baseball owner. Obama's a big basketball fan. Trump's a former sports owner, and Biden, now Trump again. One president in your lifetime, who would you want to, if you could spend an hour talking sports with one of them, who would it be?
I'm debating between Nixon and Carter because I think they both, like Carter was an idealist that tried to put his things in play, and he is a Navy guy, nuclear engineer, and things like that. So I think he would just really be fascinating, but I don't know how much he knew about sports or how
Right,
big a fan he was. So I think
right.
since you said Nixon was a bigger sports fan, I would go with Nixon just because he'd probably have more things to talk about then.
Yeah, okay,
And
okay.
he also just like, that's a different background.
Yeah. Todd answered, He went 1A, Bush 43, because love to talk about his career as a baseball owner. And then Obama was 1B because Obama's a big basketball fan. So interesting. You answered Nixon. He's the guy, the president you like to talk sports with in your lifetime. Todd answered Bush 43 and Obama. So hey,
Yeah,
there's no right answer. No
I,
right answer.
I through the grapevine, a friend of a friend, they, were in the Secret Service and played basketball with President Obama. I think that would have been a fun game to be in.
Yeah, oh for sure. Oh for
Yeah,
sure.
they'd
Well,
probably say no thigh pads though. No
right,
thigh pad, chef. No,
right.
you gotta keep it clean.
All right. Anyhow, I was just curious to get your take on that one.
Yeah.
All right, two more questions. What was it like playing the CBA the final 2 years of your pro basketball career?
It wasn't. It was like at the end there was a part. Yeah, actually, technically, but then there's a part in the middle. That was in the CBA.
Okay.
The first time in the CBA, I got cut by Boston and was there for half a season at Quad Cities. Um, the first time it was fun because I learned some good things. One, I learned that, hey, it's Christmas time. We are going to get together as a team because we're all orphans here. And there's a much better closeness. There's craziness in the CBA because you'd all be sitting coach and the guy would be like, I'm going to just sit first class. There's open seats there. And then he'd get in an argument with the stewardess going like, no, get back here. I remember the one guy in the CBA, Tony Harris. He dunked on a guy, and this is before 9/11 and things like that. He stood over him, and he pretended like he had a shotgun, shooting him, and then he went by the bench backpedaling with the six shooters, and we're just like, Tony, you can't be doing this. So it was the circus there, you know, and everyone was trying to get out kind of, but it was just like, okay, you better be in this for the love of the game because this is just a different class and type of basketball here, right? Which was kind of fun. Then later on, the CBA, it was hard because you're at the end of the career and you're going down and you're trying to make it back up, but you're not really doing it. And you're like, okay, this is failure. And you're tasting it more on and your body won't cooperate. You're in the shower before the game trying to get loosened up because this joint's not working or that one's not working. Um, and then you're in actually bigger arenas and it's nicer, but there's not the intensity then. That's the one thing where it's like, yeah, Quad Cities, they got this new John Deere arena that held 20,000, but we still only put 5,000 in the seats. And it's better to play in a 3,000 seat barn that was back in the 1920s where everyone's sweating on top of each other and screaming than in a bigger place where it's just empty.
Did you ever think about playing abroad, professionally abroad?
I did. My brother played there a bunch. It never worked out. I took pay cuts at times to play in the NBA. I was also terrified because playing overseas, you talked about some crazy coaches that would have these just monster two-a-day practices and stuff. And I had a hip flexor injury and I had patella tendonitis and Achilles problems. There were times in the NBA where I'd be like, I don't deserve to be here because I can't jump up and dunk the basketball right now. The body's that broken down. And it's like, how in the world, if I got into a crazy coach that was just practicing us to death, I'd just break down way too quick. So, in the prime when the body was working right, yeah, that would have been a lot of fun.
Steve, you've been incredibly generous with your time, and this will be my final question. What a great hour and change spending time with you, Steve, getting to meet you and so forth. What is in the future for Steve Scheffler?
Philosophical, I hope heaven. That's, when you go through life, I had a friend that's a Navy pilot, right? And, then he was a commercial pilot and now he does this software thing. And he talked about there's nothing like the thrill of landing a plane at night on a carrier. There's nothing like that thrill of coming off the plane in the finals and having all the people there at at the airport and things like that. So there's different highs like that you're not going to get again. But then a lot of times we always think that, oh yeah, it's the popularity or it's the money or this. Not necessarily. You never know how the future ends up or what purpose you have, because that's the thing I noticed as a rookie going like, hey, some of the saddest people were the ones that totally made it, that were the all-stars, that were the starters, because they thought happiness in their life was going to be accomplished when they got X. When you get X and it's not enough and you still feel empty, that's when there's a big problem. So then you're like, hey, you never know in your life. There's a coach in the summer league, and he talked about this one. Like, what does one mean to you? And everyone's like, being the best, winning the championship. Da, 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 da. He's like, no, one is this. There's only one NBA team that needs to want you to be an NBA player. And you never know when that one scout is watching you. Maybe it's when you're walking off the bench, or at halftime and you're pouting and you're right there on the fence, and that knocks you off. You mouthed off to the coach, you mouthed off to the official, that one. Or maybe you did that one heroic thing. In our lives, you never know until it's all said and done what those one things are. We can all look at, oh yeah, the one thing was being in the NBA finals and stuff like that. No, maybe it was that one thing where you talked to that kid and spent time with him, and otherwise he would have committed suicide. And now he went on to do something great. And you never know when that one thing or multiple things happen in your life, who's it with, or what the effects are going to be until it's all over. And that's the nice thing, no matter what body you were given, because to play in the NBA, we all say, oh yeah, if you work hard enough, you can do anything. Well, a lot of those guys are retired, and you ask, well, why aren't you still playing? Genetics help a lot, yes, and working hard exponentially increases your probability of success. But I hate the kids that are just like, all right, you're a professional basketball player or you're nothing. Kind of my kids' mentality when I was a little kid. It's like, no, it's those one opportunities that might not even look so glamorous that you have no effect. Like It's a Wonderful Life. If you ask me what my favorite movie of all time, Wonderful Life would have been it, because if you look through his history, going like, he's a nobody, right? But yet he had great impact when he didn't even realize it. And that's some of the things that you look forward to, going, okay, I'm here for a purpose. I don't think it's to play basketball anymore. Where are those opportunities where you can make a difference that are going to mean something?
Very philosophical answer to the what's in the future for Steve Scheffler.
Minored in philosophy.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Very, very deep, very non-superficial, very deep. Well, Steve, what a great time, and really appreciate you doing this, and I'll have you say goodbye to Olivia too.